All right. Welcome to the JDC West 2022 not-for-profit case presentation. Thank you to our judges, Nancy Parker, David Adelknoff, Phil Bobby, Eric Macleese, and Sarah Wilson. Competitors will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask the presenters questions. Competitors, you will see Zoom chat notifications at various intervals to indicate the remaining time. Any speaker who continues to speak after the maximum time limit will be stopped. No questions or comments will be permitted from the audience. All judges are asked to have their microphones muted during the presentation. The audience is banned from any material or naming convention that bears the name or symbol of a competing university. We ask the audience leave the Zoom call immediately following the presentation. Judges, once again, please stay on the call until I advise you to move forward to the next call. Competitors, you may begin your presentation.
When my brother was 19, he began using illicit substances. Because of this, he had to engage in many different dangerous activities in order to fund and continue his usage. Unfortunately, we grew up in a small town without access to resources like organizations like yours. Now, this led us into the question of how can Renew provide recovery to more people suffering from substance use disorder through engagement and long-term relationship building. Now, what about in an alternative world where you were able to meet Ryan today? Ryan has been an illicit substance user for the past 4 years and lacks a support system because of problematic drug use and broken familial relations. He is looking for a non-judgmental space in order to pursue recovery and has reached out to you and is interested in entering the Freedom Center.
Now, how can Renew provide recovery to more people like Ryan who are suffering from substance use disorder through engagement and long-term relationship building? A strategy must follow a few key criteria, the first being shifting to online fundraising campaigns, providing the opportunity to connect with Renew and the people you service, and then removing barriers to giving and donations, such as feeling a lack of connection. All of these key criteria accumulate in our strategy of refresh. The KPIs that will be involved in this strategy is reaching $3 million in revenue purely from online campaigns over the next 3 years, having social media engagement rates across platforms of over 1%, and having additional revenue of $6.5 million generated. The impact of this is going to be an additional 500 people like Ryan who are able to join Renew in their recovery journey.
Now, into a SWOT analysis, a major strength of the organization is that 92% of donations go directly to programming. Now, a weakness of the organization is that lack of online presence, especially with the major shift online due to COVID-19. Now, that does equally provide an opportunity as Canadians are becoming more accustomed to donating online, and you can take advantage of that in order to plug some of your funding gaps. Now, a major threat facing your organization is low response rates to traditional mass marketing campaigns your organization has used historically. Now, a critical insight here is the shift online due to the COVID-19 pandemic has put your organization behind the curve technologically.
We'd like to take a look at a root cause analysis, identifying that there is currently a mismatch between Renew's avenues for relationships and the way people want to be engaged with. The first symptom is that there are staff and volunteer burnout. There's low donor engagement and there's missing capital for long-term projects. Additionally, there's a lack of long-term relationships, which has all led us to the critical insight that donors and volunteers lack a meaningful way to feel engaged with your organization.
Now, into a quantitative analysis, in order to be able to help more people, you are looking to develop the Freedom House. This will require $5.5 million to develop, along with $1 million per year in operating expenses to be able to continue its operations. Now, there is some good news though, in that 31% of Canadians say that they can give more, but you just need to be able to move past the barriers of them not feeling connected to organizations being a major contributing factor to them not donating. Now, a critical insight here that we want to take away is that Canadians are willing to give and have the capacity to give more as long as you can break down those barriers between them.
We have taken these critical insights and developed it into criteria and KPI that a recommendation must follow to help people like Ryan. The first, you're currently behind the curve, and to get on top of that digital curve, Renew must shift its online fundraising or its campaigning to online. Again, being measured by the amount of revenue driven from online campaigns. The second being providing a meaningful way to get engaged with the organization from the people you serve, and this will be measured in social media engagement rates. And lastly, Canadians want to give and they can give, but those barriers must be removed, such as feeling a lack of connection or empathy towards the cause and organization. This will be measured through additional revenue driven in our empathy-based funding models.
Now, what would have this meant for my brother? So if Ryan had applied to an organization, he would have been put on a wait list for approximately 3 months to get access to the Freedom Center. Now, after that time, he was able to participate in the short-term support groups you offer, but due to lack of support your organization is able to offer in that 21 to 40-day period where there's severe withdrawal symptoms, he had to switch organizations. This break in trust has resulted in him relapsing due to that.
Now, how do you refresh? Refresh is a 3-year strategy designed to meet the short-term funding requirements needed for Freedom House, along with the creation of a new expanded sustainable revenue source to cover those reoccurring costs. Now, this plan is going to allow you to raise the capital necessary to build Freedom House, help 500 more people through recovery. This will be done through a naming rights campaign, boosting donor connection through an empathy-based simulation, and expanding on proven engagement models like your thrift shops and bringing them to the digital world. This will be broken into 3 key phases. So the first, again, that capital naming campaign. This is really important because corporate sponsors do have a high capacity to give, and this is going to allow you to develop long-term partnerships with them where they have a stake in the successful operation of Freedom House. Reconnect is going to be that simulation demonstrating the experience of someone living with substance use disorder. Now, this is going to be the signature event of Renew. This will allow Canadians to build that connection that is so important for donations and see the harsh realities that someone with substance use disorder may have to live with and the often impossible choices they have to make. Now, lastly, Resell. This is going to be creating an online thrift store, expanding on what you're already good at. This will build on existing ways of engagement and reach those who prefer to online shop and donate. This plan will take place over 3 years, and there's a few key areas I'd like to point out first. First being the launch of Simulation Reconnect at month 8, and then the online store creation and ongoing marketing that will be going on into the foreseeable future. But first, I'd like to start into the first phase of refund. This phase is going to be broken down into 2 activities, the first being a recruitment campaign and the second being your capital campaign. So the recruitment campaign is really important to get that much needed expertise to set the rest of recommendation into smooth sailing. The key players here is the HR manager, Janessa McAllister, and a communication director. These 3 will all be working together to run the recruitment campaign as well as promote it externally. Some key aspects to this is you will be hiring for a donor relations manager, social media director, warehouse manager, and warehouse workers for the warehouse of the online thrift store when it opens. And I would just like to point out that this does happen over 2 phases. So first priority is that donor relations and social media director, where that will happen months 0 to 2. And closer to the opening of the online thrift store, month 10 to 12, you will be hiring for the warehouse manager and their workers. Now, this campaign will go across multiple different online platforms and resulting in over 66,000 impressions, 60 applicants, and digital advertising costs of $5,400. Some KPIs for the recruitment program specifically is a 2% click-through rate across platforms for your posting, 60 applicants, and then those high priority positions being filled by month 2. Now, moving on to the capital campaign. This is going to be where you focus on fostering relationships with those major gift givers with your newly hired donor relations manager. Your communications manager will also focus on making sure that internal communication and communication between givers and the donor relation manager is in line with your values and your branding. There's going to be two key prongs in the capital campaign. So the first, and probably the emphasized one, is going to be major gifts, which is donations of over $50,000 in exchange for naming rights of key areas of the Freedom House. The second, still significant to fundraising, is going to be donations between $5,000 and $50,000, with a plaque commemoration being displayed in the lobby. Now, there are many potential corporate partners you could go ahead with for this program. So someone like Bison Transport, Bell Media, Cargill, these are all corporations that have a capacity to give and a value match with your organization, a desire to really help improve the community. And of course, with working with larger organizations and a larger gift, there also needs to be legal and contract considerations. So this contract will be on a 15-year perpetuity, a payment plan of 50% upon signing the negotiation contract and 50% upon completion of Freedom House, indemnification and termination clauses. That being said, if a brand is harmful to your organization's values or image, there is an opportunity to relook at the contract and potentially leave if necessary. And lastly, right of first negotiation. Now, this is a really important part because this is going to be the aspect of that long-term partnership. These corporate sponsors and organizations are going to have a stake in the success of your organization and of Freedom House. So they're going to be working with you for these 15 years. And with the right of first negotiation, that 15 could turn into 30, 45, etc. Now, overall, this naming campaign is going to raise $2.35 million towards Freedom House and people like Ryan. The KPIs in this area is going to be 10 naming right contracts signed by year 2, and that signage is installed and ready to go by the grand opening.
Now let's take a deep dive into our second phase, Reconnect, which would happen over the course of the 3 years. Now, we'd like to take you through a walkthrough of a simulation that we believe can really empathize and connect with Canadians. And we believe that this is the best way to connect with them in seeking donors. And so here, we would seek in really sharing the realities and day-to-day life experiences that individuals with substance use disorder must go through. So for example, you would be given a random individual and have to make life choices based on their circumstances. So here, an average individual may choose to go to work, let's say. But what we want the simulation to showcase is that there are a lot of nuances that these individuals have to deal with added instabilities that make their lives very fragile. And so the outcome of this simulation is to help move and make individuals who participate in the simulation game be compassionate to investing in your programming, volunteering, and sharing with others. And so there is an ethical consideration. There is a risk of exploiting those suffering from substance use disorder when telling their stories. And so we want to make sure your organization is very sensitive about this. And to address this, they would be involved in every step of the process in telling that their story through the simulation creation. Now let's look at some activities, specifically looking at sponsorship and donor development. There are 3 key players: a donor relations manager who would find corporate sponsor and in-kind donors for the creation of the simulation, Janessa McAllister, and corporate sponsors. So we see that in-kind donors would be able to cover 50% of the costs in creating the simulation platform, and that corporate sponsors would be able to donate $200,000 to your organization and for the simulation. And some criteria that we'd look in addressing who would be the best fit to partner with your organization is that they support local and social initiatives. There's a large supporter basis, a commitment to community building, and a strong history of CSR. So here's an example of a software development company based out of Winnipeg called Fanex, and they have a platform which allows you to have creative processes in creating a game and simulation that you could probably make. And then Bell is another organization corporate sponsor that has an emphasis on community and support. So here KPIs is that you sign a partnership with one corporate sponsor and one in-kind donor by month 2, and that the corporate sponsor donates $200,000. Now, taking a look at marketing, this would be content created to promote the simulation, with a key player being your marketing director. And so now looking, they would be able to post across 4 different platforms. And we believe that this would increase public engagement, spreading awareness. And our target demographic would be between 20 to 60-year-olds who have the ability to give and who are interested in learning about your mission. Financial considerations include an ad spend of $36,000 and a marketing manager's salary of $56,000. Now, here's an example of marketing that you could do for the Reconnect simulation and possibly a YouTube video on dealing with stigma behavior. Now, the KPIs here are click-through rate at 1.1%, reach and engagement rate exceeding 1%, and 10 social media posts made by launch date. Now, let's get into the simulation. So here representing the realities of individuals with substance use disorder, there are 3 key players: an IT project manager overseeing the management of the simulation, Janessa McAllister, and a corporate sponsor. So here, the simulation development would take place over the course of 6 months, and you would be able to work closely with software development company and individuals to create stories, and this would come at a cost of $100,000. And a kickoff event would be a live virtual event with individuals participating in the simulation game. And here you would target 20 to 60-year-olds, Canadians driven to learn about the cause with a 1-year revenue of $1 million and expenses of $289,000. And some KPIs is that the platform gets 1.2 million visits and raises $3.8 million.
Now into the last phase, Resell. The goal here is to be able to develop an online equivalent of your current thrift stores. So the first piece there is that online store creation. Now, by having this online store, it'll allow you to generate funds in order to help develop the Freedom House, and along going past that, a reoccurring and sustainable revenue stream to fund those continued operating expenses of $1 million per year. So the initial key players you'd start with is your executive director, the director of Thrift Freely, and a website developer. Now, with the goal of this is to create an online platform for customers to use to purchase thrifted items. This is a proven way of engagement with stakeholders and allows those that don't have access to your current brick and mortar locations, whether that be because of geographical differences, to still engage with your organization. We anticipate with this a first-year revenue of $1.1 million and first-year expenses of $625,000. Now, we realize that in order to do this, you'll have to generate more items to host on Thrift Store. We would look for you to collect donations through strategically placed donation bins within the community and community donation drives to help increase the number of items you can list on your store. And as well, we'd look to have unsold inventory be rotated between the brick and mortar locations and warehouses quarterly in order to promote different eyes on those products. Now, a second piece here is marketing, and the goal here is to drive traffic to your new online store. The 2 key players here would again be the marketing director and the director of Thrift Freely. So the goal of the marketing campaign is to use social media platforms along with search engine optimization marketing to further build on the momentum from the simulation Reconnect. We anticipate there to be an additional $75,000 in marketing costs for this. Now, the KPIs we use to measure this is 25,000 followers across the 3 accounts by year 3 and $1 million in sales in year 1. Now, for the financials of the full recommendation, over the 3 years, we anticipate total additional revenue of approximately $9.5 million and an additional $2.5 million in expenses in order to generate that revenue. This will create a surplus of right around $7 million, about $500,000 more than the money required to develop the Freedom House and 1 year of operating expenses.
Now, taking a look into risks that could be associated with our implementation. So the first one is that you're unable to find 10 corporations willing to acquire naming rights. And to mitigate this, we would say to focus on 3 to 5 larger corporate sponsors. Secondly, if you're unable to source an in-kind donation for the game of the and developing of it, we would seek to attempt to source an additional $50,000 in donations to subsidize that. And lastly, difficulty in sourcing additional inventory for the online store. You could use unsold merchandise items from physical stores as stock.
Now, what's the impact here? The funding and awareness model will allow you to get back to people helping people, the human advantage. To put a number on that, 500 more clients every year will go through the Freedom House. Now, what would this have meant for my brother? He never would have been put on that wait list and would have had access to those residential services in that critical 21 to 40-day period. He as well would have been given the opportunity to tell his story through the simulation and aid in his recovery process by owning his story. And on that note, we'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
And Sarah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. Just quickly, when you're referring to the online platforms for shopping and then considering warehouse logistics and whatnot, are you intending to partner with other locations nationally, or is this a self-driven adventure to create from scratch?
Sure. So the key thing here, what we want to do here is this is more of what you said, as in the self-driven adventure. We've built into the cost a acquisition of a warehouse facility in Winnipeg, where you're able to store all those pieces, and that way you can have end-to-end control and really drive that customer experience so that you can give those who are trying to support you the best experience possible.
Thank you.
And Nancy.
Following up with the resell aspect of your plan, what did you base the revenue projections on for the 1.1 million?
Sure. So if you could open Appendix 26, that gives an idea of what we anticipate this to work. So this was based on clothing sales, and there's another drilling that we can go onto that on the next slide, that it anticipates $5, but it anticipates $5 per item sold, and it includes the cost of the acquisition, the warehouse expenses, etc.
And Phil, go ahead.
Hey there, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to pivot to the simulation and just ask, is there like market comparables that this has been done in the not-for-profit landscape, and then also your revenue projections? I guess, how did you determine them?
Yeah, if you could go to Appendix 6, Bree, please. So United Way actually has a case study on this, and this has been implemented Canada-wide, where they actually created a simulation very similar with the concept of showing individuals the realities of homelessness. And you would have to make decisions based on, their circumstances. So this is an example of that. And then Eric, if you'd like to take on some finances.
Sure. So if you could go to Appendix 25, this is based off of a Facebook marketing campaign and the anticipated reach and website hits generated from that. And you can see the donation capture rates teetering off throughout the years while maintaining the same ad spend. And that is how we generated the revenue anticipations for what we believe this can generate.
Great, thank you.
And David, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. My question is about you're recommending those three initiatives to raise this 6.5 million over the next 3 years. I was wondering if you took into account the impact that it would take on the staff, basically the additional level of effort in supporting the new virtual sales, the online sales of the store and finding corporate donations. So just wondering if you took that into account in your assumptions.
Of
course, I can take this one. So definitely one thing we are very considerate of is that currently staff are facing a bit of burnout. There's a lot going on. So that's why recruitment costs and hiring additional people was a big part of our campaign, because we find it necessary to make sure you're not overburdening anyone. And those volunteer and staff can focus on their core competencies, which was focused around event and campaign planning.
Thank you.
And Sarah, go ahead.
My final question, considering the number of organizations that are out there that all provide a similar service, what is it about your organization and your methods that help you stand out from the crowd to be the most successful venture to partner with?
Hi there, I can take this. We believe that your organization is very unique in that you have locations countrywide, and we believe that you have a very sensitive topic that you're dealing with, and that Canadians have a right to participate in learning more about this. This is a Canada-wide issue that we believe your organization has the best capacity to pivot into this new digital world, and we believe that through our recommendation that this is the best way forward to ensure success of your clients and your organization for the foreseeable future.
And that's time. Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you so much. I'm assuming we can leave the call.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.